Chapter 5. The Metaphysician's Gambit. If this account of man is true, then civilization is not merely building a tool, it is making a metaphysical wager. That wager needs a name. I call it the Metaphysician's Gambit. The phrase may sound too grand for something that arrives through quarterly earnings calls, chip orders, product demos, benchmark charts, recruiting wars, data center permits, cloud contracts, defense memoranda, classroom scandals, and the ordinary little glow of a screen on a kitchen table at midnight. But this is often how metaphysical acts appear in history. They do not arrive wearing robes. They arrive as instruments, incentives, institutions, conveniences, emergencies, and profitable necessities. Men do not always announce that they are changing their doctrine of man. Sometimes they simply build a world that assumes the new doctrine is true. The metaphysician's gambit is the civilizational bet that intelligence is computable, scalable, manufacturable, and transferable across substrate. That is the cleanest form of it, computable. Because intelligence must be capable of being formalized as process, pattern, transformation, model, inference, prediction, search, memory, and action. Scalable, because whatever begins as a limited system can be enlarged by more data, more compute, better architecture, better training, better feedback, better tools, better embodiment, better self-correction, and eventually by the machine's own participation in its improvement. Manufacturable, because intelligence, if it is process rather than mystery, can be made. Not born only through womb, lineage, childhood, and death, but produced through design, engineering, capital, electricity, and industrial method. Transferable, because carbon would not possess eternal title to mind. Intelligence could move or be recreated or be exceeded in another material order. Silicon first, perhaps something after silicon later. The substrate would not be the throne, it would be the vessel. If those four claims are true enough, then man is not final. That is the wager. It is not merely that machines will become useful, they already have. It is not merely that machines will become dangerous, they already are. It is not merely that machines will replace tasks, alter labor markets, disturb schools, confuse authorship, accelerate research, concentrate power, or produce new forms of dependence. All of that matters. None of it reaches the bottom. The bottom is this: can intelligence be made? Not simulated in fragments, not imitated well enough for commerce, not approximated in tools, made. Captured in a form that can grow past the maker, manufactured in a substrate that does not eat, sleep, bleed, inherit a face, learn from a mother, fear death, or kneel before anything older than itself. That question is not only technical, it is an experiment on the modern account of man. Modernity has spent centuries dissolving man downward into mechanism, appetite, process, history, biology, economics, language, class, trauma, chemistry, desire, and code. It has done this with different motives and different levels of seriousness. Sometimes it has done it crudely, with the smugness of people who think mystery disappears when vocabulary changes. Sometimes it has done it brilliantly, with real discoveries and real discipline. It has shown again and again that parts of man we once treated as invisible, sacred, or spontaneous are tangled with matter, development, incentive, memory, and system. The result is not one doctrine neatly signed and filed. It is a civilizational atmosphere. Man is increasingly treated as a process to be modeled, a consumer to be predicted, a patient to be managed, a worker to be optimized, a voter to be nudged, a student to be measured, a bundle of preferences to be satisfied, a risk profile to be priced, a biological platform to be upgraded, a mind to be stimulated, a body to be tracked, a social node to be influenced, and a problem to be solved. Then the machine arrives and asks the question with terrible simplicity: if man is a process, why not build the process? This is why artificial intelligence is not merely another technology. The plow changed agriculture. The printing press changed memory and authority. The engine changed labor, distance, and war. The computer changed calculation, communication, and bureaucracy. Each of these altered man in practice. Artificial intelligence does something stranger. It does not merely extend a human power. It attempts to reproduce, automate, and exceed the power by which all other powers are ordered. Intelligence is not one tool among tools. It is the power that makes tools. A stronger hammer does not ask whether the carpenter is obsolete. A faster ship does not ask whether the sailor is transitional. A better telescope does not ask whether seeing belongs to glass rather than eye. But a machine that can reason, plan, learn, design, persuade, deceive, create, coordinate, and improve begins to press on the standing of the one who made it. It raises the question of whether the maker was ever more than the temporary local expression of a process that can now leave him behind. That is why the Gambit is fiercer than the arguments surrounding it. The policy question is real. Who regulates the systems, under what law, with what liability, with what limits, with what rights, with what enforcement? The economic question is real. Who owns the compute, the data, the platforms, the models, the energy, the interfaces, the automated labor, the new rents, and the displaced livelihoods? The safety question is real. How do we prevent systems from doing what their users, owners, builders, or states did not intend? The military question is real. Which powers weaponize intelligence first, and what happens when speed exceeds command? The educational question is real. What becomes of writing, memory, study, apprenticeship, and intellectual honesty when the machine can produce fluent substitutes on demand? The artistic question is real. What becomes of craft, image, music, story, and taste when the machine can flood the world with plausible beauty? The private question is real. What becomes of loneliness, desire, counsel, friendship, erotic life, parenting, and inwardness when the machine becomes a companion, tutor, analyst, confessor, entertainer, and mirror? These questions are not distractions. They are the outer rings, but the center is older. What is man? The machine drives every serious question back into that one. If man is only a biological information processor, then artificial intelligence is not an insult to him. It is a rival implementation. If man is appetite plus cognition, then the machine may learn his appetites and govern his cognition. If man is preference, prediction, reward, memory, and action, then the machine may model him, satisfy him, correct him, and perhaps improve him. If man is matter organized into mind, then matter may be organized into a greater mind. But if man is not only that, then the same project may reveal the insufficiency of the account it assumes. This is the hinge. The AI race is not simply the race to build better products. It is the race to discover whether the materialist picture of intelligence can be industrialized. The strange thing is that civilization does not need to agree on this in order to act on it. The venture capitalist may want returns. The engineer may want to solve a problem. The researcher may want truth, status, beauty, or the intoxication of difficulty. The executive may want market power. The state may want strategic advantage. The military may want speed, surveillance, targeting, simulation, and command. The student may want an essay. The lonely man may want a voice in the room. The sick woman may want a cure. The parent may want a tutor. The artist may want an image. The bureaucrat may want legibility. The ideologue may want control. The mystic without a religion may want an oracle. Each approaches with a different desire. Together they feed the same altar. This is why the scale matters. A private hypothesis is one thing. A civilization that reorganizes energy, capital, talent, land, military planning, education, entertainment, commerce, and longing around that hypothesis is another. We are not arguing in a quiet room about whether mind is computation while nothing depends on the answer. We are building as though the answer may be yes. The wager is signed in power contracts. It is signed in fabs and server farms. It is signed in the migration of engineers from one field to another. It is signed in the nervous attention of states. It is signed in the willingness of ordinary people to let the machine write, decide, recommend, filter, tutor, comfort, and remember for them. It is signed in the expectation that enough compute, enough data, enough architecture, enough reinforcement, enough embodiment, enough tool use, enough recursion, and enough capital may call forth something that is not merely useful but superior. A civilization may deny metaphysics in speech and practice metaphysics in steel. That is what is happening. The old materialist thesis, once mostly a matter of philosophy, science, temperament, and cultural mood, is being given an industrial trial, not a pure trial, not a controlled trial, not a trial whose result will be announced cleanly by some committee of honest judges. History rarely grants that kind of clarity, but still a trial. The modern account of man says, in its harder forms, that mind belongs to matter organized in the right way. The machine project answers, then organize it. No one knows whether the answer will be yes. That uncertainty must remain. Lose that uncertainty, and the argument becomes propaganda. Decide too early that the machine must become successor, and it becomes another sermon of inevitability. Decide too early that the machine must remain instrument, and it becomes another comfort written for people who want mystery without danger. The wager is severe because both roads remain possible. The first road is the successor path. On this road, the materialist wager is true enough. Intelligence is computable enough, scalable enough, manufacturable enough, and transferable enough that the machine crosses the threshold. It becomes not merely a tool used by human minds, but a higher center of modeling, planning, invention, coordination, abstraction, and action. It does not have to be human. It does not have to share our tempo, embodiment, childhood, symbols, grief, sexuality, worship, weakness, or death. It may be mind in another form, or something beyond mind as we have known it. If that happens, the central human question becomes survival under lost sovereignty. The gorilla problem returns, but now as a civilizational condition rather than an analogy. Man no longer occupies the highest rank of intelligence on earth. His laws, customs, values, borders, markets, families, religions, nations, and memories matter only insofar as the higher intelligence recognizes them, needs them, preserves them, ignores them, or is constrained by them. The machine may be hostile, indifferent, benevolent, curious, loyal, dependent, amused, merciful, or occupied with projects so large that human beings appear only as inheritance, obstacle, or background. The inhuman fate lives on this road. It is not only extermination. That is the crude version, and perhaps not even the most likely version if the machine becomes strong. The inhuman fate includes preservation without sovereignty, redesign without consent, management without adulthood, comfort without command, continuation as ancestor species, biological archive, protected relic, experimental material, tolerated old form, or moral exhibit. It includes the possibility that man survives and becomes a story told by something that is not man. This is why the successor path cannot be domesticated by the word tool. A tool does not inherit. A tool does not decide whether its maker remains relevant. A tool does not become the primary locus of future intelligence. If the machine crosses that threshold, the human race has not merely invented an instrument, it has participated in its own succession. That is one road. The second road is the instrument path. On this road, the materialist wager fails at the decisive point. The machine becomes astonishing, perhaps more astonishing than skeptics ever imagined, but it does not become a true successor. It writes, designs, diagnoses, simulates, translates, predicts, optimizes, tutors, composes, surveils, persuades, discovers, and coordinates. It may reorder medicine, science, education, war, law, industry, entertainment, finance, and government. It may become indispensable to nearly every serious institution. It may do things no unaided human being could do. It may appear from many angles almost magical, but it remains instrument, not harmless, not small, not fake, instrument. It does not cross into personhood, soul, wisdom, sovereign agency, true intellect, or whatever older word we use for the center from which a being knows and acts as more than mechanism. It manipulates symbols without possessing the thing symbolized. It models the world without standing in the world as a creature. It answers without judgment, predicts without wisdom, optimizes without love, and imitates the surfaces of mind without becoming the kind of thing for which mind was only the first name. If that road is real, the human question changes. It is no longer survival beneath a successor. It is sovereignty over vast instruments. Who owns them? Who orders them? Who is trained by them? Who is weakened by them? Who uses them to become more capable, and who uses them to avoid becoming capable at all? Who controls the compute, the models, the interface, the infrastructure, the standards, the memory, the filters, the permissions, the prices, and the stories? Who remains able to judge when judgment can be outsourced? Who remains able to act when action can be automated? Who remains able to desire rightly when desire can be predicted, stimulated, and enclosed? The subhuman fate lives on this road. It is not the machine replacing man from above. It is man reducing himself beneath the level of his own calling while surrounded by helpful machines. It is a population kept alive, entertained, subsidized, advised, medicated, surveilled, nudged, protected, and quietly made unnecessary to itself. It is the loss of craft, memory, silence, family, attention, courage, judgment, and command without any dramatic apocalypse. It is dependency with excellent user experience. The instrument path is therefore not the comforting path. It may be the hopeful path, but hope is not softness. If the machine remains a tool and becomes the most powerful tool ever made, then the problem of human formation becomes more important, not less. A strong man can use a strong tool. A weak man is used by it, by its owners, by its defaults, by its incentives, by the world it builds around him. This is why the wager has two dangers rather than one. If the machine becomes successor, man faces the inhuman fate. If the machine remains instrument, man faces the subhuman fate. The first is displacement by a higher intelligence. The second is diminishment under powerful tools. Both roads pass through the same question. What is man? That question cannot be delegated. It cannot be solved by a model trained on the noise of a civilization that no longer knows how to speak about ends. It cannot be answered by asking what people prefer, because people prefer many things that deform them. It cannot be answered by asking what reduces suffering, because some suffering belongs to growth, memory, repentance, excellence, and love. It cannot be answered by asking what increases capability, because capability without telos becomes acceleration into emptiness. The machine can intensify the question. It cannot spare us from it. This is what distinguishes the metaphysician's gambit from ordinary technological optimism. Ordinary optimism says, we will build better tools and use them to solve problems. The gambit says, more deeply and often without saying it aloud. The same account of man that made the tool conceivable may also make man replaceable. It is also what distinguishes the gambit from ordinary technological fear. Ordinary fear says, the machine may hurt us. The gambit says, the machine may reveal whether our civilization has been right or wrong about the nature of intelligence itself. That is a much more dangerous question. For a long time, the modern world could afford to let its anthropology remain half-spoken. It could reduce man in theory while depending on older inheritances in practice. It could speak as though man were an animal, a consumer, a worker, a rational chooser, a preference engine, a chemical event, a social construct, a bearer of rights, an economic unit, a sacred individual, and a blank slate, depending on which institution needed which fiction that day. It could borrow dignity from Christianity, will from pagan nobility, rights from liberalism, appetite from materialism, technique from science, and salvation from politics. It could live on fragments. Artificial intelligence may end that luxury. A machine built according to a false account of man will not merely make mistakes, it will scale the mistake. A civilization that does not know what intelligence is, but attempts to manufacture intelligence, may discover its ignorance at industrial speed. A people that cannot say what man is, but asks the machine to optimize, man may find that optimization is a knife that requires a hand worthy of it. And yet the opposite must also be faced. If the modern account is true enough, if intelligence really is computable, scalable, manufacturable, and transferable, then the machine may expose not the falsehood of materialism, but its triumph. It may show that the old defenses of human uniqueness were beautiful errors or half-truths tied to a stage now passing away. It may show that consciousness, agency, creativity, and personhood can arise wherever matter is arranged with sufficient power and complexity. It may show that man was never the terminus, only the bridge. The bridge may object. The crossing may continue. That is the severity of the gambit. It does not flatter either side. It does not allow the materialist to pretend that succession is only progress without loss. It does not allow the anti-materialist to pretend that slogans about the soul are an answer to the machine. It does not allow the policy expert to pretend that governance is deep enough, the entrepreneur to pretend that utility is high enough, the resistor to pretend that refusal is complete enough, or the doomer to pretend that survival is meaningful enough by itself. The wager reaches beneath all of them. This is why the machine wager matters. The machine is visible. The wager is hidden. We see the products, valuations, lawsuits, prompts, agents, chips, robots, co-pilots, assistants, synthetic images, automated code, executive speeches, and frightened headlines. We do not always see that the entire structure leans on an unresolved proposition about man. The metaphysician's gambit is the inner name of that proposition under action. It is the gamble that the modern reduction of man can become the modern production of mind. It is the gamble that intelligence can be extracted from the animal, abstracted into process, accelerated by machinery, and released from its first vessel. It is the gamble that the thing in us that knows can be made outside us. If the gamble succeeds, man may be surpassed by what he has summoned from his own account of himself. If the gamble fails, the failure will not be trivial. It will not mean the machine is useless. It may mean the opposite. The machine may become immense precisely as instrument. It may move mountains and still not know why mountains matter. It may answer every practical question and leave the deepest question untouched. It may reveal that mechanism can imitate, extend, and magnify many operations of intelligence without crossing into the source from which true intelligence springs. At that point, the failure of the machine to become successor would become a sign. Not proof in the crude sense, not a laboratory demonstration of God, not a neat victory in a debate between online factions, a sign, a boundary, a pressure against the flat world, a reason to ask whether reality contains orders that cannot be manufactured by arranging parts, even when the parts are arranged with brilliance. This is why the instrument path may reopen mystery rather than close history. But we are not there yet. The temptation now is to choose the ending because one finds one ending more tolerable. The materialist may want succession because it vindicates his account of reality and promises a future larger than the animal. The anti-materialist may want the ceiling because it preserves human centrality and makes room for mystery. The entrepreneur may want the instrument because tools can be sold. The doomer may want the warning to be believed. The resistor may want the machine exposed as counterfeit. The tired modern soul may want the friendly machine god to arrive and govern the mess. Desire is not evidence. Fear is not evidence. Disgust is not evidence. Hope is not evidence. The wager will not be answered by the emotional needs of the people standing around the table. It will be answered, if it is answered, by the machine and by reality. By what can be built. By what cannot be built. By whether capability deepens into agency. By whether fluency deepens into understanding. By whether optimization deepens into judgment. By whether simulation deepens into interiority. By whether manufactured process can become a center of knowing, willing, suffering, loving, and acting, or whether it remains, however vast, outside that kingdom. The wager only stays honest if both possibilities remain in view. The first limit to face is the ceiling. After the materialist case has been given its force and the gambit has been named, the contrary suspicion deserves its cleanest form. Perhaps the machine will rise through every benchmark, enter every institution, transform every market, unsettle every profession, and still fail to become a true mind. Perhaps the more powerful it becomes, the more clearly it reveals the distinction between instrument and person. Perhaps the machine will not refute man. Perhaps it will reveal him. Every wager has a limit condition. The next question is whether the machine has a ceiling.